Greetings to all and a warm welcome to our Show Me Anything About CodeMeter live session. We are thrilled you've decided to join us for this highly interactive event. At WIBU-SYSTEMS, we empower software publishers and intelligent device manufacturers with cutting-edge technologies, new business models, and tailor-made consulting training so you can upgrade, optimize, and automate your entire license lifecycle management and monetize your business at a higher level. With today's dynamic open forum, our goal is to provide additional clarity, expert insights, and actionable advice tailored to your level of expertise, be it beginner, intermediate, or advanced. My name is Daniela Previtali, Global Marketing Director of WIBU-SYSTEMS, and I'm delighted to have you here with us today. We are joined by Rüdiger Kügler, VP Professional Services, and two senior consultants from his team, Michael Birger and Lukas Klassen, all from the headquarters of WIBU-SYSTEMS. Before we dive into the content, let's quickly address a few housekeeping items. Through our panel of experts, we are confident we'll be able to answer all your questions about software protection, licensing, and security for PCs and embedded systems, as well as cast light on integration aspects with the ERP, CRM, and e-commerce systems of your choice. We warmly encourage you to drop your questions into the live chat box as they come to mind. If we can't get to your question during the live discussion, rest assured we'll make it a priority to engage with you individually at a later time to address your queries. To ensure a productive and respectful environment, the SMA session is not the place for one-on-one support cases. For technical issues, please refer to our customer support team. Also, while we love sharing insights, we cannot discuss timelines for upcoming features, specific customer use cases, or pricing details. These topics, however, can be addressed in private conversations outside of this session. This session is being recorded, and a link to the on-demand replay will be sent straight to your inbox within the next couple of days. This way, you can revisit the insights shared today at your leisure. As the webinar concludes, a new browser tab will automatically open, presenting you with a quick survey, which includes a few questions aimed at gauging the quality of this masterclass. While these questions were optional, your valuable feedback will empower us to enhance the quality of our offerings and tailor our online events more precisely to meet your specific needs. And now, without any more delay, I'm delighted to hand over the reins to Rüdiger. The stage is all yours.
Hello also from my side. My name is Rüdiger Kügler, and in the next hour we want to go through questions from you, and we will do this webinar very dynamically. I also like to say thank you already for questions that you sent to us already before the webinar. And so we will start with the questions that we already got in the last days. And of course, feel free to add more questions to the chat box. So let's start with the first question. How should I enter the ticket ID in the license information field? So I expect that this question is regarding the License Central, and if you activate a license, you get a ticket, and the ticket ID can be written to the license itself. And Lukas, I think it's a Show Me Anything webinar. Maybe you can show us how to do this.
Of course I can. Hello also from my side. So let's dive directly into the License Central. We have it open right here. And when you define your item, we have here our demo items for the License Central with our best practices. And we have the ticket in the license information field as one of our best practices. So every license you see here will have the product item option license information. You see here your normal item, your product code, and the product item option license information. You set this value, and in the edit dialog, you have to set this allow value modification checkbox here and choose in the drop-down box the on activation. And for the display name, you have to type in ticket, like it's written here, all lowercase characters. That's the keyword that our web depot or gateways or license portal know that we have printed into the license information field. So try it out. I'll use this item we have seen right here. I'll create a new order. Let's say customer ID is webinar. I click OK. I click OK again, and then I'll use the ticket right here. I'll jump into, in this case, it's a license portal, but it could also be a web depot. It could also be the gateway API function or some software activation wizard on your side. I see the license here. I click on activate. I'll choose a new CMAct license, and we create a new container here. It's activating the license transfer has completed successfully. And when we now look into this container 398, here on the web admin, we'll choose the 398 container. And I see here the sample notepad license we've programmed right now. And when clicking into that, I'll see the license information has now the value YT, and that's the ticket we have created right now. So now you can say to your customer when he has any problems with the license to go into the web admin, to click on the license, and that he can tell you the ticket so you can have more information in the License Central or in the license portal. Or you could even get the information in your program via our APIs, and then create some kind of diagnosis information with that, so your support processes gets a lot easier. And I think that concludes this question. What do we have in charge next? How can I automate license backups? I think, Rüdiger, that's a question for you.
Okay, so how can I automate license backups? I hear this question a few times, and the goal of CodeMeter is to avoid backup and restore. And so CodeMeter does anything that a backup and restore option is not possible. So let's imagine we have a license, you activate a license on a computer, and now let's imagine you would be able, or your customer would be able to back up the license. And then your customer could use the license, maybe with a unit counter, maybe with a usage period, or you could return, deactivate the license to License Central and activate it somewhere else. And if now the user would be able to restore the former backup of the license, you would have the license twice, or you could use it twice. And so that's why the idea of CodeMeter is to avoid backup and restore. And there are a lot of mechanisms in CodeMeter runtime which do exactly this. And so, for instance, in the operating system Windows, we have a lot of different options to make a backup restore. One is resetting the system with a restore point. And in this case, for instance, the system is set back, but some data is kept on the current state. And what we do is that in this case of this Windows restore point, we will not use the backup of the license, we will use the current license so that the user cannot misuse the license. In other ways, where we cannot find out the current status of the license and when we detect that there was a backup restore, in this case, we will invalidate the license to make sure that the user cannot use the license. And so the goal of CodeMeter is either to keep the current license and not to use the one from the restore, or if we find out there was a restore and we could not switch to the current license, then to make the restored license invalid. There are special use cases for embedded systems where an update of the device is done by a complete flashing of the device, by making a complete update of the operating system by deleting everything. And for this special use cases, there's one special mode, which is connected to the EWF mode of Windows. And maybe we go to License Central. Here we are. And in the settings of the container type, CMX license, there is the option to allow EWF or FBWF mode, enhanced write filter, file-based write filter. And if this option is set, CodeMeter will not hide the information like current license and this all over the place. It will put everything in one dedicated folder. That because this write filter is a overlay file system and you freeze your system, then you boot the system, every change is written to this overlay file system and discarded at the next reboot. And in this case, if you would use a license, of course, the license would be gone. And in the case of this EWF mode, BWF mode, we will write everything to a dedicated folder with can be exception, and then the licenses will still be there. And you can force this. You can even use this mode on a Linux operating system. So originally it was a Windows-only feature, but now it's a feature for Windows and Linux operating system. And this means on the runtime side, if this option is set, you can force that everything is written to one directory, and then you can back up the directory and restore the directory. This is possible in this case. And if you're using this option and you allow deactivation, or you want to use time-based licenses, or you want to use counter-based licenses, of course, this will reduce the security significantly. And so that's why we don't recommend this if you have these use cases, but for some special use cases, creating a license, activating a license, fire and forget, in this use case, it might be okay to use this option. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. The next question, where can I find a glossary of all CodeMeter error codes? And I think, Michael, you had no chance to answer the question yet. I think now it's your turn.
Yeah, sure. So this really depends on what product you exactly mean, because every CodeMeter product has its own help, its own documentation, and its own glossary of error codes. But I will show you as an example, the one for the runtime. So I usually like to use the CodeMeter API guide, which we have here. So this comes with your SDK. You can just open it via the Windows menu and search for CodeMeter API guide. And then you click on help, context help, and a web browser should open. And there is all the documentation for the API. But also there is a link error codes, and you can see all the error codes listed for all the languages and with their actual definition. Yeah. So let's look what we have. What the next question is. So the next question would be, how do I bind a license to a hardware device with known components? So this is something for me, I guess, as well. So it really depends on what type of device you have. So for embedded devices, which this is usually done for, customers have like specific hardware in there which have serial numbers they know how to read. And with CodeMeter embedded, for example, we have something that's called the adapter, and there is this binding definition. And I will show you some code right now. There it is. So this is the C code for the CodeMeter embedded adapter implementation, and there is the binding C. And this is how you can define binding values for your license. So here you can see the dummy binding. This is basically just a static buffer, which is used to as an example for the feature. So you can just define. So here is just defined a static buffer, which the license is bound to. But in your case, you will, instead of this dummy vector, you would retrieve your serial number from your specific chip on your platform and use that as a binding value. And this way, the license is tightly bound to that serial number of that device and cannot be used with another device. And that very same feature is also available for the runtime as well. But there it's called the binding extension. It works very similarly, but it's a little bit different from in the code base. Yeah.
Okay, we checked now what happens on the side of the device, but maybe, Michael, we can also cover a little bit what we need to do in License Central. And if you want to use such a binding extension, let's go to License Central once again. Arrow codes, here we have the License Central. And if we say we want to use such a binding extension in License Central, then let's check. We did not create one, so let's create a new one. So in here, in this case, we can enter a name for this container type. Let's call this binding extension. Our own binding, so you can choose any name freely. We will choose our firm code 6,947. We can define a CM-ACT ID. We should define a unique CM-ACT ID, let's say 2005. I think we did not use this so far. This is to distinguish between the different binding schemes. And now we can give a CM-ACT license name. This would be the name, how it would be displayed in the CodeMeter control center. Binding extension, for instance. Of course, if, like Michael showed you in the embedded source code, there's no CodeMeter control center, so this is a name that the customer will not see. But it's also possible to do this with CodeMeter runtime. So there's a runtime extension where we can do the same in runtime. And in this case, CodeMeter Control Center can be used, and so this is the name that the user will see in CodeMeter Control Center. The activation method must be set to internet. And the binding method is, okay, I think you will guess it. The binding option is binding mode is binding extension. And here we need to enter the name of the adapter. So this is the same name that Michael is using in the source code. So there's the option to use multiple adapters for different devices and to distinguish between them. That's why we can enter the name here, binding X. So it's important that this binding extension name and the name in the adapter is the same. In case of the runtime, also the file name of the created library, so shared object or DLL, must be the same. So there's a convention that it needs to include your firm code and this name to make sure that even if two software developers use the same name, that there's we can differentiate between the two different binding extensions. In case of runtime, you need to click either Linux or Windows. In case of embedded, you need to click embedded, and that's it. And so now we can add this container type to the licenses that we want to use on this device. And one recommendation is that if you produce these devices, to already put a basic license, empty license, dummy license on the device, because then License Central already knows the serial number of the CodeMeter container of the device. And so you can make a list, a table of the serial number of your device and our serial numbers. And when the user wants to activate a license, there is an easy, we call this a push update way, so that the user can then select your serial number. In the background, we will match your serial number to our CodeMeter serial number of the CodeMeter container. And then we can do an activation with the already existing container. So the user does not need to send any fingerprint, any context file, any information from the device, because everything was grabbed and stored already during production. So, and then the user selects your serial number, he gets an update file, he just copies the update file onto your device, and then licenses can be activated. And this is what we call the push update. So push update meaning creating an update file without getting any information from the target device, because we have the information already from the target device. And so I think we have seen now how to license a hardware device with known components. From Michael, how to do this on the device, and here for me, how to do this in License Central. How does subscription-based licensing work with transferable licenses? I think also a question which goes to me on the first side. Maybe Lucas can add something later. When we got this question, I think for 2 or 3 days ago, we of course had some questions back and ask to understand that scenario. And in this case, the requirement is CodeMeter offers a great way to transfer a license with the license move. That means I create 10 licenses in License Central. I want to bring them to 10 offline devices, and I want to use the move feature. So I put the 10 licenses on a CodeMeter dongle as an intermediate device. Then I take this dongle and go to the 10 devices and simply move the license from the dongle to the target device. Okay, it's a cool feature, it works. This is exactly what it was made for. And then the requirement was, yeah, but on the target device, we want to make a subscription. And so we want to use a way to update the licenses on the target device using the same intermediate dongle. So, and this is something that we did not implement because we don't want to have too much complexity. I think there are some principles like KISS, keep it simple, stupid, simple. And we said this is something which is very special, and there are different other ways how to do this. And so transferable licenses to license move and subscription is something which is not intended to work together. And so this is not implemented, but we have different options to solve this. And one option is to use a remote activation, because if we have the license on the target device, and let's assume we have a computer of the field engineer that we can use as a bridge for the internet. So the target device does not need any internet direct connection. But let's say we have a device of the field engineer, which can be connected to the target device and which can be connected to the internet, maybe at the same time or maybe at 2 different times. And then you can implement some tooling. We have some samples for this. You can implement some toolings how to do this. And I would like to show one of the samples. And we have a ready-to-use sample that we call software activation wizard. But I like to show you the technology beyond the software activation wizard. And for this, I'm starting the API guide. So, and the first thing is, on the target device, we need to create a container. So let's assume this is my computer. Let's assume we are a developer and we want to program an application which does this. And for this, we need to connect to the target device. I will refresh everything and clean up all the handles. So, and for this, we make an access over the network. We first need to make an access to the subsystem access, and we need to know the IP address of the target device. And CodeMeter, of course, needs to be installed, and the license server needs to be activated on the target device. Let's assume that everything of this is already pre-installed with your devices. And to find out the IP addresses of the server, there's also a function in the CodeMeter API, cmGetServers. I need to find it, cmGetServers. We can get the IP addresses or the server names. We can execute this. We need to have a buffer size which is long enough. And then we see all the license servers which are available with their IP version 4 or IP version 6 address. So, and then we can step through all the servers. I have a subsystem access. I do this. So like here, subsystem. And when we have this, we can import the license information file. By the way, I already did this. And in the next step, we can have an access to the newly created container. This will be a firm item access, firm code 6,947. So access. So by the way, this target device is running on our internal server with this IP address. So, and the next step after having an access to your firm item is to get the remote context file. I will call this temp request WIBU-SYSTEMS. I need to enter the firm code for which I want to create the context file and click on execute. And then I get a message, no error occurred. And let's go to this folder. Let's go to this folder. Let's go to this folder. Give me a second. So it's on a different screen, so I need to move it here. I need to move it here. See temp. So date modified. And then we have a request which was created simply now. And we can open this with Notepad, for instance, or Notepad++. And I also need to move it to the right screen. So, and this we see is the context file that you usually create from the local installation. So the next step is now when you have the context file on your field engineer computer, that you can call, or your application can call the API of the web depot that we call the gateway API. Lucas already opened it up here, and there is some API guide. And in the API guide, we need to retrieve the information about the ticket. So we would enter the ticket here. We would get the information of the internal license ID, which in this case here of our sample is 179. So, and then the next step is when we want to activate the license, we need to enter the ticket here. We need to enter this 179, so the internal ID. We need to enter our firm code 6,947. CMAct ID was the 2000, the default one I told you. And here we need to enter the context file that we created from the target device. And then we can do the activation. We get a content, which is the update file. And then there is another API call that we can do on the target device to activate the license there, which is the CM execute remote update. So, and this is the basic principle how to implement this. And as I told you, there are a lot of samples. We call this the software activation wizard samples. And there are samples for auto updates, so which are licenses which are replaced or assigned to a container. Renew licenses for subscriptions, which can be renewed in the background automatically. And in this case, I picked the simple wizard, and in the simple wizard, there is the code base. There's a function single ticket, which does a single ticket activation, and it does a do single ticket, create new container. And then here inside the do single ticket, we activate all available licenses. And here we see the process that I already described. So we get a CodeMeter wrapper class. With the CodeMeter wrapper class, we get a remote context, either on the same computer or on a remote computer. Then we do the activation. We apply the update. We create a context as a receipt, and we upload the receipt to the license creation server to CodeMeter License Central. So maybe, Lucas, I forgot some options, and maybe you can add some more options for this process.
Yes, Rüdiger, you just described that we have some appliances in the field, and we are coming there with a field engineer computer which has access to the license central. And we create containers on these appliances, activate licenses there, and the field engineer afterwards can go his way and leave the site, and everything is in place. But we have also another possibility if we don't have a field engineer going there and activating that once. But when we have some device which has access to the local network as well as to the internet, to the license central at any time, we can also apply a license server there. So that means we are using all the licenses on that device, and the appliances can grab the license from the license server. But the license server doesn't have to have access to the internet all the time, but at least some of the times to renew the subscription. And how can I set up this license server? This license server is simply a normal CodeMeter runtime running in network mode, but you have to do some kind of configuration in the license central that your licenses work on the license server. So if we have a look here, I have the sample notepad single user, which we used before. And there we have the license quantity set to 1, and the access permission is local, which means this license can only be used locally and not via the network. So this license would not work on a license server. If we have a look at another license we have, their floating user, it's called. We set the license quantity, or we add the license quantity of 1. And the default value there, we don't see that it's local. If we change it to set, we can see the access permission is network or local. If we do add, it's local and network, so both of them are allowed. So the appliances can use the license on that license server. And it's a great way also to have different licenses in your license central for these license server licenses as well as local licenses, because then you can sell these licenses differently. And I think they will have a different price tag, because licenses that can be used by anyone and only be used in a pool. So you have 5 users which are using 3 licenses, but not at the same time, will be a bit more expensive than just having 5 licenses for all the 5 possible users. And how we can update these licenses automatically when the subscription has to be renewed, I think we'll have a look at this later in this webinar. I think that concludes this question: how does subscription-based licensing work with transferable licenses? And our next question would be, how can I protect my Python-based machine learning application? I think, Michael, that's another question for you.
Yeah, thank you. So I've prepared something for this. We have a Python application here, or 2, let's say. So first of all, we have one application that generates random numbers and stores them in an HD5 file. Those HD5 files, though this is a binary format that is often used for machine learning applications and AI applications to store weights in for the model. And so I just use it as an example to encrypt a file, because this would be the same for an ML application as well. Yeah. So here we have a this random data generator, which generates this random.htf file and stores it to disk. Let's execute it. Yeah. So we've generated this random.htf file. And now we have a data reader which can read those htf files and print them to standard out. Let's try that. Yeah, so this is our random data. We can read it. All good so far. So now we want to protect it. And this requires 2 steps. So first we need to protect and encrypt the application itself. So in this case, the data reader would be a sensible thing to encrypt. And also we have to encrypt the random.htf file. So let's start with the application first. For this, I'll have an example in the AX Protector UI. So we start off by selecting, in this case, it's a Python application. So we select Python, we select the source file, the Python source file, that's the read data application, and the target directory, that's the protected subdirectory in my case. Let's click next. For now, we can just select the basic protection. And we can ignore the license list for now as well. What's important in the static protection writer, the file encryption tab. It has to be enabled because that's a feature that we use. It actually enhances the protected binary. So yeah, the protected Python application with a hook that's able to detect the loading of those encrypted files and actually decrypt them transparently to the application. You have to enable that because otherwise the decryption won't work. So let's click next. We the runtime protection features can be left at default. Special options as well. We can check the configuration so we can see the file encryption option is enabled. Let's click next and let's click encrypt.
I think the encryption process takes some time. So the encryption process analyzes the application. The encryption process needs to encrypt the single parts differently. And I think Michael is using a remote firm security box, which is a little bit slower. That's why it takes longer. And of course, you can do the same process also in a command line. So if you want to put this into some automatic pipelines, of course, you can do this. And now it's ready.
No, it's finally done. Yeah. So let's have a look what we get there. Actually generated this read data by in the protected directory that's actually encrypted. There is some method stops and methods basically to load the encrypted data, and you can see in the end the actual blob with the encrypted application, which is then loaded and decrypted at runtime. So yeah, those base64 strings in this case. So let's encrypt the data now. So for this we have a encrypt file configuration file. So in the future, this option will also be available through the UI. But for now, there is this config file which you can use to encrypt files. And here you select files. So you have this option files to encrypt, and it has input and input file and the output folder as well. Of course, product code and firm code, what you want to use for that. And then you can use the command line to encrypt your file. Let's try that. I have actually something in here. So it actually uses the xprotector Python and the configuration file, which has all the values in it to encrypt the file. Let's execute that. And it will encrypt the file and put it into the protected directory. Let's try and execute the. Let's go to protected directory and execute the reader again. So that should work because I have the proper license. That's actually in a dongle, which is plugged into my PC. I will try. I will unplug the dongle now and see what happens if I re-execute the program. So let's try that again. I have the dongle in my hand. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, actually a window opened on a different screen, and it says I'm missing the license. So yeah, let's hit cancel. And this is because yeah, I'm missing the license to open the program. So now let's see if we can use the protected file actually with the. I'll copy that and copy that into the main directory. Of course, we have the old one. I'll delete that. And rename that. So we have the encrypted HT5 file and the not encrypted reader. Let's try and read the encrypted file with the non-encrypted reader. Yeah, and it fails. That's because the file cannot be read without the AX engine and the actual secrets that are in the dongle. Yeah. So yeah, that basically concludes this part. Let's see what else we got.
In the meantime, we got one additional question. I want to. I think we should answer this question now. For a product item with license quantity greater than 1, how can I use the core API to retrieve the number of licenses that are in use, taking with user limit still available, etc., when realizing a floating license model? I think this is a very nice, easy, and simple question. In our samples, there is a C#.NET sample, which is called License Manager. And in this sample, we show exactly how many licenses do we find in the network and how many are free and how many are used with the different mode. And this one is utilizing the API. And I think we still have a handle here. And so we have a handle. In this case, we should have a handle to the entry that we want. And then, and I need to check this and test it. I'm not completely sure. So there are some information like the net info cluster. So it's the net info cluster, net info user ext. So you see it's really spontaneously. And when I call this no network license information available, network info user, no error occurred. And the output is nothing. And let me check the network info user ext. No error occurred. So maybe I have the wrong handle type. Execute. CM get info. So we get an output. We get one output. And in this one output, we see we have a box mask, we have a feature mask, and used license quantity equals 1. And let me check the function net info cluster, execute. The data path is too small. We need a higher buffer. Execute. The data path is too small. Which size? Execute. So, and this one says that we have 38 entries. By the way, you need to divide 2,128 divided by the size of the structure, and then we would get to the 38. So, and here we see the information box. Our net info cluster goes with the information of everything, and we see the used licenses and the free licenses, the total licenses, station shared licenses. So here we have an entry of everything on the server. Here we see we have an entry with firm code 99 and with the product code 6,000,010. One license is there, one license is free, no license is used shared, no license is used with no user limit. And so we have here the information about all entries on the server. And with the user, I think we get the information of the user itself. You have the serial number box, firm code, access mode, application identifier. And here we have some information who is using this, and with the user ext structure. Occurred. So, and here used license quantity, application identifier, station share, slot ID, credential, and in the credential we see that the username is Mibi, so Michael Birker, from who. And so with these three functions, you can get the information, and then you need to swap through all the entries, and then you will have all the information, which licenses. So with the cluster, you get the information how many licenses are free, and with the user, you get the information who is using which license now in which mode. So, and with this, back to the questions which were sent already before the webinar. How can licenses be renewed automatically upon expiration or through a third-party system? When we read this question, Lukas and I were not sure if the question is regarding the third-party system who renews the license in License Central, or if it is the software activation wizard which picks the renewal and activates it on the system. And so we said, let's do both and discuss the both options. And Lukas, you think the first option is the right one. So how can I do this with the ERP system?
Yeah, so first of all, we have three different kinds of subscriptions we can offer. And if you're a regular viewer of our webinars, you know them already. The first one is not a real subscription. Technically it is, but on the business side, it isn't. That's the so-called field engineer license. And we have that also in our License Central demos. You find it here, field engineer license. What this does is that you can renew that license an infinite amount of time until it is withdrawn. And it only has a short expiration time. The use case is when you have a field engineer and he's going, for example, to a construction site, and you have real expensive licenses on his container or dongle, and you don't want these licenses to get lost, you can hand him a field engineer license, and that license will automatically expire after a short amount of time. So you don't have to worry if that gets lost. You simply withdraw it, and the license then cannot be renewed anymore. In the License Central, we define it as expiration time and set it to this value. This value is the encoded value for your configuration. It says the 30th of January means you have the license will be valid 30 days after it has been renewed. If you want to have it 60 days, you set it to the 1st of March, I think it would be, of the year 2000. And the time, the 30 seconds, say that you can start a renew 30 days before the license will expire. In that case, 30 days, the license is valid. 30 days, you can renew the license, means that the license can be renewed at any time. That's for demo purposes. And you have to allow the value modification of the expiration time, and the name of the display name of the value modification has to be checkpoint, and it has to be written like that, all in lowercase. That's also a keyword for our web depot and gateways, that we know that this is a field engineer license. So, and now let's have a look. We have our license portal in here, and I just log into that. I have prepared a group for today, and we have our license also in here. It's under the subscription licenses category, field engineer license. I'll create this license. I have now here a ticket. I'm logging out again. I'll enter the ticket in the web depot mode. I click on activate license. I'll choose the container we have used before for the coolie. and the transfer has completed. When we now look into the container, we now see the field engineer license has been activated. Of course, we have the CODI inside there as well. And this license is valid until the 17th of October at 9:49 a.m. That's exactly 1 month. And I have talked another minute, and we see here the update license button. That means we can renew our field engineer license. I'll click on update. It will do another transfer. And when that's completed, I can reload our web admin, and I see it's 9:50, so another minute passed, and we renewed the license for today plus 30 days. So that's the field engineer license. The next one we have is the license, the subscriptions we manage in our license portal. That's called in the demo items periodic renew. And you see here that we also have the expiration time set on activation. The initial value doesn't matter at this point. And the name has to be auto renewal _ expiration. That's also a keyword we're using in the portal to note that this is a license portal managed subscription. And I need to log in again. Then I can create this subscription license. And it does also need some configuration in the license portal. So we see here that we have our notice period of 90 days. We set the automatic renewal to yes, and we have the first expiration time, which should be on the 31st of December. And when the notice period, so the expiration time minus the notice period gives us the time frame when the license will be renewed automatically. So like the field engineer license, you have the update license button and can do another activation, and then it will renew itself for another full year. So when we get into the notice period, which will be starting in October, we can then renew the license, and it will be valid until the end of 2026. You can suppress that the license will be renewed automatically when you cancel the subscription. Cancel is different to withdrawal. Withdrawal means the license will be deactivated the next time when the container gets into contact with the license central. And canceling the subscription simply means we'll set or we don't renew it automatically, but it will still be valid and not expired until the expiration time, which would be the 31st of December in this case. And to cancel it, I can press this cancel subscription button in the license portal right here. So also here that we see that, I'll activate the license in the known container. I'm refreshing our web admin. I'll see the automatic renew is in place right here, and it's valid till the 1st of January at 1 a.m. That is because that's the local time. It will be the 31st at midnight for UTC time. And the third method where we have for handling subscription is when you have an external system like ERP system or a shop system, and will set the expiration time here on order. And you can call the display name of this order-based option how you like, but you have to program it in your ERP connection or shops connection. So I have prepared API calls for that. We can use the test tools Rüdiger showed you earlier, but you can also program it into your ERP system or use some API testing mechanism like this. So the first step is that we have to log in, which we do for which we do a post request to the do-lp login endpoint. You see here we have the required version. If you set this, we guarantee you that the output and the input for this endpoint will be the same even when you upgrade your license portal, web depot, or gateway. So please always use that, and you can upgrade without a hassle. The modus is always set to gateway. The language says in which language we will output error messages. Login action has to be user, and then we have the mail and password. That's a local server, so you don't have access to that. You don't have to try. You won't have an access to the license center here. So, and as a result, I'll get the return message which says we have no errors, and I'll get this session. I use some variables in here, and I'll just update them. That's the session ID, and that's the session token. For the next version, we're releasing with the license portal and gateways, you don't have to do this login beforehand. We'll also offer you an API token. So the next call we have to do is the create license. That's a post request to do LP create license. We'll have the header in there as well. Now we pass on the session mail, session token, and session ID to authenticate ourselves. Next, we need the group ID to say where we want the license to be delivered in. And that's in case our webinar group we've created earlier. That's the internal ID of that. I've looked that up beforehand. Then we'll have the item ID. That's the item ID you have defined in your license central. So we know which license you want to create. Then we have the assign mode public, which means how the license should be visible in the group later on. And in the options, we have a JSON string with JSON objects, and we'll define here that we'll set the amount to 1. So we want to only create one license, and that option is handled by the extension. And then we have the subscription end. You remember that was the display name of the expiration time. We have the action order, which means we'll pass it on to the license central as an order defined parameter. And then we'll set the value to the 17th of September. Let's say the 18th, and send it. As a result, we get the ticket, which we created. We can look it up in the license central. We go to search license, enter that ticket ID, and we get a result that we've created this renewed by ERP license, and the subscription end is the 18th of September. When we want to change the license now, we want to have a new expiration date in place. In the current version of the license portal, we'll call the same endpoint. In the next version, there's a different endpoint, but the idea is the same. We've split the dual P create license up to be a bit more simpler and not one function that does everything. And we have to enter the same parameters in here we had earlier. So we'll define how the license should look like in the end. And we set the subscription end to the 20th of September here. We have to pass on the ticket identification, and we also have to pass on the ticket license ID, which we'll have also in here. That's the 17. So I'll enter the 17 here as well. I click on send, and you see the replaced license ID. That's the ticket license ID of the old one. It's the 17, and the new one is the 18. So we have replaced the license, and when we have a look into License Central, we'll see the yellow background means we have withdrawn this license, which was the 18th of September, and the new one is the license which will expire on the 20th of September. So the ERP system has renewed the license by API, and now we'll can have a look how to update the license automatically on the end system via the software activation wizard.
Okay, I think that we can do this very shortly, because we already saw the software activation wizard sample, and I can open it once again. And here in the software activation wizard sample, you find everything that you need. And as already teased, in the activation wizard sample, we have different options. One is the auto update. And so if you're using this renewal option, where Luca showed you that you can create a license from outside with your ERP system with this API call. And in this case, it's an auto update. And here in this case, the software activation wizard takes the serial number of the container, sends it to a license central or to the gateways, checks if there are auto updates available, and then applies the auto, downloads the auto updates and applies them. And if this is a renew with the automatic renew of the portal, in this sample, we read out the ticket from the container, and then we check with this ticket if there is an renew available, and then we automatically apply the renew. So the only difference is the first call, that we either get the ticket from the license information field, like we showed in the first question. So it was quite interesting that the first question was exactly mentioning this, or to use the auto update with the renew option. Okay, so let's take a look at the questions. And I know that a few questions are very similar like this. Can licenses be deactivated remotely once the customer is back online? And the answer is yes. We already talked about this. If you want to remove a license, you do a withdrawal. The withdrawal means that the license then gets an auto update, and this auto update will delete the license. So it's exactly what we discussed before with the licenses. There's another simple question: why is the dongle number changed for the same act license when specific actions are performed? This is something which happens only for the legacy firm code 5 million. And this happens when the license is activated for the first time. So when you import the license information file, which creates an empty, not activated container, we create a temporarily randomly chosen serial number. And then when this container gets activated, then the real serial number is determined by License Central or by the firm security box behind License Central. And that's why the serial number changes for the first at the first activation. For the universal firm code 6 million, the real serial number is already created when you import a license information file. And this one then creates random serial number, which is long enough to make sure that there are no collisions. And in this case, there is no change. So this change only happens with the old 5 million firm code. And if you're facing this challenge and you're having the old firm code, please contact us to talk about migration to the new firm code. Is it possible to encrypt libraries without requiring activation? Yes, there is an AX protector, a mode that we call license-free or unbound mode. And with this unbound mode, you can encrypt something, a file, a library, an executable, without needing a license. So that means it's protected against reverse engineering, but you can use it without any license, simply copying it and then start it. And the last question that we should have a short look at is, Michael, this question goes to you about CodeMeter and Docker. I think this is one of the most asked questions in the last months.
Yeah, sure. So of course you can use CodeMeter with Docker. So the best option would be just to use a license server outside Docker or a CodeMeter cloud container. So you have your application in the Docker container as you usually would, and connect to a license server outside of this Docker container, outside of Docker presumably, and get the license from there. So that's the best option. Then of course yeah, CodeMeter Cloud is the other option. And then, of course, there is a kind of a last resort option, which you can do if nothing else is available in your situation. Then the license is bound basically to a Docker volume, so the Docker volume ID, which cannot easily be copied, or when the volume is copied, the Docker ID is regenerated, but it's not. I mean, it's not technically enforced. So someone who really knows what he's doing can actually copy the volume in a way that the volume ID is preserved. So this is why this is a last resort option and not as secure as the other ones. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so with this, we went through the questions that we got in advance and all the questions that we got during the webinar today. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention and for the lot of questions that you sent to us. Have a nice day, and I hope to see you again in one of the next webinars.
See you. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.